All right, welcome to HackerKast. This is where WhiteHat talks about current events in the application security industry. You know, it's to keep everybody up to speed on the things that are going on, and it's a chance for Matt Johansson, Robert R. Snake Hansen, and myself, Jeremiah Grossman of WhiteHat, to keep in sync with each other on the things that are going on. So this week we got a few cool stories that came up this week, and one of the interesting ones is that last week we talked about Shellshock and how a large portion of the internet were vulnerable, if not potentially vulnerable, to this serious issue. This week, the story is a little different, and Matt was investigating this one, the Shellshock attack bear. So what did we learn there?
Actually, this was arsenic.
Oh, that was Robert. Sorry, Robert. Go ahead.
No worries. It's basically the same issue over and over again. We keep saying the same thing. Very slightly different variants. And some of the variables are colliding in interesting ways, getting out of the escaping the encapsulation or whatever. I think really what's going to happen here is we're going to find there's a ton of different variants of not just this bug, but very similar bugs based on Bash or based on similar types of shell escape. It's pretty cool. I think we're going to see quite a bit of this in the future.
So wait, so we've patched, and now we got to patch again, and then we're going to have to patch again?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so I guess the guys that were
starting to sound a lot like WordPress, isn't it?
I guess the guys that were holding under embargo should have talked to Tavis and Michael Zalewski ahead of time.
That's right. They're outside the threat model.
So what's the fix if we can't safely patch on this? What's the fix other than to patch? Can we get rid of Bash somehow?
Yeah, I guess, right? I mean, reprogram everything from the ground up. That doesn't sound like fun.
All right, so I guess
when I'm done.
Yeah, so I guess the area evolves, and we're going to have to keep an eye on it, and we're searching around for it with all our customers. So we've been checking for it for about a week now at WhiteHat. One of the interesting things is that you have to be using Bash, you have to be using the code in a certain way, and I think so far we've out of the 700 plus customers we have, 30,000 websites, we've only found 8 websites that are vulnerable at this point. So the intersection of all the things you need to be vulnerable isn't actually quite that big. So if it's going to be big, if it's impactful, where is it? If it's not on the top tier websites, where is it?
Vulnerable from the web. That's an important distinction.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Or vulnerable from a shared hosting provider. If you're on a machine, you might be able to leverage or overwrite some variables that can attack somebody else. cPanel. I think where it's going to be the worst is things like cPanel or other like routers or switches, F5 boxes, that kind of stuff that control networks or sets of machines. That's probably where it's going to be the biggest.
Well, Robert and I were talking about this over lunch earlier in the week, and we were kind of laughing because it's like, okay, you're talking like the sky is falling about these things that were already extremely vulnerable piles of vulnerabilities. Like, okay, now they're more vulnerable? Like, okay.
So we got Shellshock, and the world is vulnerable, but not hacked yet. There haven't been many incidents, if any, like public incidents regarding Shellshock. But we did see JPMC in the news today, and I saw it. I caught it in an airport. I'm sitting here. I'm actually 15 floors above Times Square behind me, where I'm normally in Hawaii. And oh yeah, proof. Okay. There's Manhattan. But all through the airports, it's talking about JPMC. Like half the families in America have data exposure as a result of this hack. So Matt, what have we learned here on this story?
Yeah. So for the second time in 3 or 4 months, JP Morgan Chase got hacked, and yeah, I actually got a notification from them personally about it, which is how I found out about it before it got all over the news. But yeah, supposedly what they're saying, it's via the web, which is why we're talking about it. But according to their SEC filing, no username, passwords, account information, and stuff like that were compromised. It's just personal contact information, like your name, your address, your phone number, your email address, stuff like that you've used to sign up with an account with them. So we're waiting as details come out. This just happened yesterday, I think, or it just became public yesterday. So
they said on the news like half of the households in America are affected. That's pretty big.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, like for me, it's okay. They got my email address. I'm just kind of under the assumption that the bad guys have my email address, right? So it could have been worse. Let's just say that.
Mm-hmm.
Then we got the this other hack here, which I thought was fascinating. The headline says, "Hackers indicted for stealing Apache helicopter training software." I mean, if that just doesn't cause you to read, nothing will. So I'm reading this story, right? And the names are huge. You know, these guys allegedly hacked. So all these guys are young, like in their 20s. Some are from Canada, some from Australia, some are from the U.S., and they're all really young, late teens, early 20s. And apparently, supposedly, allegedly, they hacked into Microsoft, Epic Games, Valve, Zombie Studios, and the U.S. Army. And apparently, through SQL injection, it says, they stole Apache helicopter training software. Okay, now we shouldn't be like excited about hacks like this, but that's just freaking cool of what you can get with SQL injection.
It's like the best video game ever.
It is. So, you know, it just kind of goes to show you that, you know, SQL injection works, and there's real live data on the end. So this stuff is still happening. And, you know, part of this is interesting to me. So the SQL injection is still out there, despite that we've known about SQL injection since Christmas Day, '98. But, you know, we went and looked at the stats in our customer base, and SQL injection is now number 14 on our list. Like, it's largely getting eliminated out there. So when these hacks occur, I guess would you guys agree that it's usually on the second and third tier websites and not the main ones now? Like, there is progress being made.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely getting harder. I think a lot of people have sort of figured that one vulnerability in particular is the one that bad guys tend to like the most. It's particularly easy to fix, really, if you even sort of know what you're doing, but the effects, if you don't, are devastating, and it's particularly easy to find compared to a lot of other more esoteric and also very bad but harder to find type ones.
The return on investment is just huge for hackers looking for this stuff. So even though the number of vulnerabilities might be going down, the reason we still see this in the headlines is because, look, you can take an Apache helicopter software. This sounds like next week on Scorpion. This is the plot. The plot.
Scorpion. Oh man.
Imagine trying to install that software. Hey guys, I got Apache helicopter training software. Like,
I'm sure it runs on Windows.
Windows NT.
Yeah.
And what was this other story here? Matt, you were mentioning something about Eric Schmidt taking Tim Cook, chairman of Google, taking Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, to task about something.
Yeah, they were kind of going back and forth a bit because I think when the whole iCloud thing happened with all the celebrity pictures being leaked, that Apple's been kind of on the defensive on the security side of things, and in turn, kind of passive aggressively calling out Google for their privacy infringements. And let me read the quote directly here, so I don't paraphrase. But Tim Cook said, "At Apple, we believe a great customer experience shouldn't come at the expense of your privacy." Kind of in reference to Google. Somewhere else in context, it was in reference to Google. And
translation: we're not Google.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so Schmidt kind of punched back today and mentioned that Google's at the forefront of a lot of encryption and that Apple's playing catch up, which is great. A lot of passive aggressive things going on by ultra rich people here, but whatever. But
you know what's really interesting and good for everybody is these guys are now competing with privacy. The privacy wars have begun. I don't see, whether Google wins, Apple wins, doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, we're going to get better security and better privacy. I mean, none of us have a real dog in the race on that one. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, Arsenic has a really cool talk about security and privacy being at odds. And this is kind of what the conversation is going on here, right? You're either secure or you're private, apparently.
Do you have a recorded talk on that one somewhere?
I do somewhere. I'm sure we can find it. Yeah.
Okay, we'll post that one in the links.
Keynote of AppSec California last year, so yeah. That's recorded.
Oh, right on. And the last thing I thought we should talk about is something that hit particularly close to home this week, something we didn't expect. Robert, you want to talk a little bit about that one?
Yeah, we got a call come into our customer support line, and normally we don't really get calls about Aviator or anything related to products or whatever. It's usually I can't log in, or whatever type of calls. But this one was trying to get in touch with me specifically, and of course, our customer support team is trained not to give out my information. But it turns out somebody was actually calling around as me, and so people are trying to get in touch with me saying, did you actually try to call me? But they're trying to call to get access or information from either competitors or other people, security people in the industry as me. So I don't know if I should be flattered or what, but
Will the real Robert Hansen please stand up?
So we were getting actively spearphished, social engineered. They didn't get anywhere, but we saw it and we caught it. So I guess it happens to everybody.
Yeah, I think, but in this case, I think it's actually pretty horrible, because if you think about what other security companies have access to, which is who they really were targeting, not me specifically, they could have access to a lot of customer data, a lot of machines that people rely on or whatever. So, if you work in the security industry, you should be extremely cautious and make sure you're talking to the person who you really think you're talking to and not taking their word for it.
Which is kind of why there's a lesson in it, why we talk about it, is everybody should be on their guard. All the time. The moment that you're not is the moment you get hacked. So it's just part of the world we live in, part of the industry we work in. We just kind of got to accept it and go, hey, that was fun, and we get to talk about it and make light of it. But live to fight another day.
That's right.
It provided a pretty entertaining Facebook thread about pretending to be arsenic, so at least that came out of it.
And that's what counts. All right, guys, this is we'll wrap up HackerKast here. I'll catch up with you guys next week. We'll see what the world has in store. Talk to you later.